So should we get started? Does that sound okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Well,
God. Yeah. So it's my distinct honor and privilege to introduce our speaker for today. So this is Professor Charles Trzcinka from Kelley School of Business as Professor of Finance and co-chair of the Finance Department, or chair rather. Today he's going to be presenting research entitled "A Tangled Tale of Training and Talent," which I love the alliteration. PhDs in institutional assess management. I'm sorry.
Money management.
Money management. Exactly.
So another alliteration, money management.
Wonderful.
So we're full of alliterations.
This is fantastic.
Thank everybody for coming.
Thank you for being here
on this day. In preparation for this, I bought a book. Ryan Kaplan's Case Against Education.
Fantastic.
Where he argues that we spend close to $1 trillion both on K through 12 and higher education. He's arguing spend half. And why he argues is that he takes the argument, the evidence in favor of education as a signal, and takes it sort of to the extreme.
Oh, yeah.
This paper is about, it started about, how do you find good managers, right? Mm-hmm. And it kind of morphed into training versus talent. And so the training argument is the argument that probably most faculty everywhere in the world think that what you do in classroom matters. What happens matters. How the choices you make, the things you train your students for, that matters. Mm-hmm. The signaling arguments, the argument that he's saying is it doesn't matter what you do in the classroom, as long as it's hard and it takes them and they're conscientious and you identify smart people. That's what's value added to the education. So he poses you can walk into any Princeton classroom, they don't check. If you wanted to get a Princeton education without a degree, you can do it. There's no one who'll ever check you. On the other hand, what would the market show you? What would the market say if you say, well, I spent 4 years at Princeton, I didn't get a diploma, but I did all this wonderful stuff, as opposed to the opposite, if I got a diploma and I didn't go to class. So what we're doing in this paper is challenging some of the evidence here in a way that is in a very different institutional setting than none of these guys ever thought about. Here's the deal. The problem that they always have is how do you measure the output of a worker, CEO? We focus the paper on CEOs, okay? Because we're finance guys and we're trying to get published in finance journals. But it matters for this stuff too, which is they can't measure the output very well. How do you measure a worker? How well they're doing? How do you measure what a CEO is doing? Okay, we can. In this setting, we can actually get a pretty precise measure of what they're doing. And the other problem that they have, and this is laced through this book, is what's called endogenous matching, which is people don't randomly sort into jobs. Okay, and so what happens is what you might observe is somebody's choice on what they like and what they're good at, and as opposed to the training versus talent. Well, we try to control for endogenous matching here. So the first part of the paper is first showing that PhDs matter in asset management, money management, and that it's endogenous matching, not endogenous matching. The second part of the paper is the training versus talent argument. Okay. Now I can get into exquisite detail if you want. I can do more if you want. Describe the industry. Okay, so the setting is this. These are asset managers who are managing money for large institutions. So IU Foundation, when IU Foundation wants to gets its money managed, they go out and they look for asset managers. They don't put it in a mutual fund. Okay, they would never, ever want to be mixed with individual investors. They go out and they hire Western Asset Management, who, by the way, is in our sample. And actually, now that I think about it, some of IU portfolios actually might be in our sample too. And they are, these asset managers specialize in institutions. So you have very large clients, IU Foundation with $1 billion, CalPERS with $300 billion, the California State Pension System. Most of this money is the defined benefit pension plan, so GE Capital, GM, CalPERS, they hire managers, okay? The amount of money under managed dwarfs what's in mutual funds. In fact, in some years, it dwarfs what's in mutual funds and hedge funds combined. Okay, I'll give you an example of that in just a minute. You can see that in some of our tables. So this industry is lightly studied. One of the focuses of my research is to actually change that, and I've got another paper that just actually came out this month using the same data set. What I started doing, and I knew 25 years ago it was lightly studied, and it was sort of a big joke that everybody had, because there's all this information about mutual funds. When you hear about asset management, money management, it's usually mutual funds, brokers. But nobody ever, people rarely do this part of the industry or this part of money management because they don't have the data. I've got some pretty good data, and I can describe in close detail what that data is that I've collected that nobody else has, and that's what's generated this. Because the company that I collected from went out of business in 2008, which is the reason why our sample ended in 2007. And it's challenging to update the data. So what we're able to do is discover each one of these managers. When IU Foundation hires them, Western Asset Management says, look, we've got these products. Think of them as portfolios. These portfolios, so small cap value, large cap growth, etc. And you can put your money in these products. We've got the returns on those products by the manager. Okay? So when we talk about firms, we're talking about Western Asset Management, Nicholas Applegate, BlackRock Company, Goldman Sachs, GSAM's in our sample. Those are the firms we're talking about. And we're talking about their individual products. Okay? When we talk about, and we're not talking about the clients of these managers, we're talking about the managers themselves. Okay? What we've got is the returns on those managers. And what we've done is looked at standard performance measures in finance. Actually, one was new, and that's the manipulation proof performance measure. And what we do is we take, we identify, my data has good evidence on good background information on the 21,700 investment professionals in this group of, I think it's 900 firms. Table 1 has the it's roughly 800, roughly 830, 50 firms. We've identified the PhDs in those firms and in the PhDs in key roles in those firms. And then what we do is we see whether the performance of those products in those firms are different from the non-PhDs. And we get they're different. In fact, they're better. Okay? So one thing that's not in the paper, that reading this book, okay, or sort of paging to it, but the fact I spill water on it doesn't indicate that I'm at it. He does all kinds of back-of-the-envelope calculations in there. Let me give you a back-of-the-envelope calculation here. If you, I did this morning. If you look at, maybe you can't see that. If you look at table 1, I'm sorry, baseline table 2, which is the asset difference between PhD products and non-PhD products. Okay, and we're doing what's called alpha. This is risk-adjusted returns. Okay, you'll find a number that's 648. That's 6.48 basis points. Okay, which seems small, except that these are the assets they have under management in 2000. That's 2.3 trillion that the 134 firms manage. That's more money that's in mutual funds. Okay, what that means, so what this 6.48 is a difference between what PhDs are doing and what non-PhDs are doing. Okay, taking a look at those alpha difference. So what's the value of a PhD in asset management? $18.6 billion. There
you go.
That's how much. That's how much. There cannot be even close to that amount of money put in PhD programs in this country.
This is just for 1 year, right? So
I'm sorry?
This is just for 1 year, 2000.
Just for 1 year. And it also assumes, by the way, that this 6.48 is a net addition to the industry. That is net addition to the prices. And the reason why I wanted to put this in the paper. My co-authors got mad at me. And the reason why they got mad at me is this controversial. This calculation is controversial. It has to do with your beliefs on asset pricing. You get into all these complicated asset pricing issues, and they didn't want to get in there. So I just want to say, though, if you're willing to take his level of analysis, PhD, this one group of 531 people, okay, with PhDs, they're adding $18.6 billion to the economy. Okay, now, what we do is we say, okay, well, wait a minute. What about endogenous matching? Okay, how does endogenous matching work here? Well, suppose these money management firms are keep in mind, the West, they're dealing with sophisticated clients. Suppose they hire a PhD for advertising purposes. You want to hire a smart guy like Lee because he's articulate and intelligent, and he can interact with the trustees, and oh boy, it's great to have him on the board, so we add him. We will not be able to tell econometrically the difference between adding PhDs for advertising or adding PhDs for adding value. Okay, so we go through that's called the endogenous matching problem. So we go through two exercises to try. That's the first half of the paper. The first exercise is to look at money management firms that are founded by PhDs. Okay, so they start. Okay, they start the money management firm. And these are PhDs in key roles. Now, it's unlikely that if you found a firm and you are in a key role, you don't have information, you're not having an active hand in managing the money. Okay, and that's the second part of Table 2, which is I can put it up if you want. The second part of Table 2, and that's Part B of Table 2, the endogenous matching part, which is our first attempt at showing endogenous matching. So, sample of firms founded with a PhD serving as any key role. That number goes up from, well, I guess it goes down to 6.4. However, if you have serving as a CEO, founder, president, or principal, it increases to 14 basis points a year. Okay, which is double that money. Okay. Now, if you have just serving as a CEO, well, it gets even higher. So that's the first way that we're trying to avoid the endogenous matching problem. The second way is a classic instrumental variable, okay? With names like Ivkovich and Trzcinka and Chuduri, we figure another thing we could do is look at the names of the asset managers. From the 19th century, it's been known that there's an Anglo-Saxon and German bias on Wall Street and also on money management. That is the high percentage of Anglo-Saxon names, a high percentage of German names. And of our 531s, 36% are actually of the 21,000, 36% are Anglo-Saxon, 20-something% are German. So what we do is for an instrumental variable is we say if you are an outsider, that is, you do not have an Anglo-Saxon name or you do not have a German name, is that more likely to produce you're more likely to hire a PhD. Now, instrumental variables have to meet something called the exclusion restriction, which means that for those of you who are maybe, I don't know, do I need to explain what that is? It goes, the variable has to influence the dependent variable only through the variable of interest here, okay? So it's going to be a little hard to argue that Anglo-Saxon names themselves have the ability to add alpha, okay? So what we do is, I mean, we've never had a referee make that point. So in Table 3, the first stage is the first stage, and actually, when you have a greater percentage of outsiders, what you do is you're more likely to have PhDs, hire a PhD, which is sort of making up for the fact that you don't have an Anglo-Saxon name, you get a name like Ivkovich and Trzcinka or Chuduri. And yes, indeed, it works in the second stage. Okay, that's the part of panel B. We argue in the paper, and at this point, now let me stop for just a minute. One of the reasons why I wanted to make the presentation here at this paper in particular is that we're finance guys. Okay, we started off as a finance paper. This is the first time it's ever been presented among a non-finance audience. When we presented this paper at all kinds of finance conferences, and usually people get into all kinds of detail about the performance measurement and the risk adjustment that we do and this kind of thing. We've gone down those lines, but we really haven't addressed I'm not sure, maybe we have. We slowly address this other issue, which I think is a more important one, which is training versus talent. Okay? So the first part of the paper is all about endogenous, first showing that there's an effect, that is there's an $18 billion in the first year effect. And secondly, that there's this non-endogenous matching, that it's actually, they're adding value. Okay? So if you believe they're adding value, then let's see how they add value. Okay? Let's take a look at whether it's training versus talent. And what we do, let me put a cautionary minute here. What we cannot do is.
I'm really sorry to interrupt, George. Just
go
real
ahead,
quick.
interrupt me anytime you want.
This is perfect. Just generally, I know it's been about 10 years since you presented, but we try to keep the opening remarks.
Oh,
to
yeah,
about
no,
10
I
or
can
15
go on.
minutes or so.
Believe me.
No.
So ask questions.
Please feel free to. I want you.
Yeah,
I want to make sure
interrupt.
you
Ask
make your
questions.
key
I mean,
points,
if you let me, if you don't stop me, I'm going to go on for about 3 hours.
But if there's any particular points, yeah, that'd be great. So I'll go ahead and start. So you feel free to raise your hand, and we'll get it going. But Lee, if you'd like to jump in, please feel free.
Yeah. So one thing economics teaches you is that people don't tend to leave $100 bills lying around on the sidewalk, and this is like.
There's a joke about that. But go ahead.
Yeah. Actually found a $10 bill the other day. It was lying on the sidewalk.
Oh, there you go.
I picked it up. So it means I'm not an economist, I'm a social scientist. But why aren't, you've got a pretty long sample. Why aren't people learning in these firms that don't have the PhDs? These are, I mean, suppose you're off, I always tell my students, suppose you're off by 10%. Suppose you're off by 20% on your number. That's
Still
a big number.
Still a big number.
It's
Yeah,
still-
and it gets even worse because
it's a big number.
to even support your position, what we show is PhDs attract more money.
Yeah.
The performances are bigger, and that's a question that we don't address well in the paper.
So there's two questions. So one is the puzzle.
That's a puzzle.
As to why, and then two, as an independent check on your findings. Presumably these are publicly traded companies.
No, they're not.
Well, none of them are.
Oh, not only that.
So you can't
they're-
track stock prices.
Well, you can't get any of that. Now you can't get. Here's the stuff you can't get. Okay,
So I was gonna
we
say,
can't.
you
And
can
that's a
track the
good.
stock
That's a good.
prices.
Here, I mean, we get. Let's see, Control Shift. All right, just go to where. What happens here is that slideshow from the current slide. So what we can't do is we can't. First off, we can't observe their holdings.
Right.
Okay, we don't observe their trades. We don't observe their 13Fs. We can't study the precise mechanisms. Okay,
Right. Yeah,
this is because these management firms, there's no public disclosure of anything they're doing. Their clients actually own the asset. So when IU Foundation gives money to Western Asset Management, it doesn't give money. The money's in the bank somewhere, probably State Street, and they give the right to trade. So Western Asset Management literally doesn't have the money. So the cash flow rights are all with IU and the bank, not with the. So these guys, they have to file what's called a Form ADV, and that's it. They don't do anything. So you can't. They do have to file 13Fs, but that's at the firm level. That's not at the portfolio level. They don't. We can't. By the way, we can't tie products to specific managers, and we have no information on compensation other than some general stuff about fees, and we can't. We have trouble getting the data.
On compensation, you could do the counterfactual. How much higher would their salaries plus bonuses have? These are guys who are paid with high-powered incentives, presumably. So how much higher would their compensation have to be so that it nets out the gain in their performance?
Or simply, do they get paid $18 billion more?
18 million.
No, but that's 18 billion per PhD.
No. For 18 billion divided by 531, we could do that on each portfolio if you want. I mean, the returns you've seen are gross of fees.
Yeah, so I mean, just again, I think that would really make your point. And so their salaries are not that much higher. So
Well, I bet they are, or are they? I mean, that's
Well, we don't know.
Can't you tell? Or what's
We don't know.
plausibly
I mean,
18 billion
we
divided
know
by-
some of these people. I mean, Lakansh, like Fleetfleet and Vishny, we know them. They're wealthy guys.
Yeah.
They have 49% of their firm. I don't believe they come anywhere close to getting, it's interesting, they don't have 51%. I don't think they have any. I mean, we're close to getting the entire value added of their alpha.
Why not?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question. Why don't, I mean, why, maybe the supply, maybe there's not enough PhDs that want to enter the business. Maybe there's agency cost in the firm. I mean, that's
just actually though. So you think that their fees are not $18 billion higher
Oh, no.
in aggregate?
Oh, no. In fact, the PhD fees are lower than non-PhD fees. If you, so, okay, so wait. But keep in mind, what we observe is fee schedules. And each client gets a fee based on the amount of money they put in. We don't observe the client. We only observe the composite, all the portfolios combined to a particular product. That's put together of, say a product with $1 billion under management that might have 5 portfolios of 50 million and 1 portfolio of 500 million and then another portfolio of 250. I mean, we don't observe the composition. So those will be all different fees.
Yeah.
So all these fees, all these returns that you see are net of trading costs, but gross of fees.
I'm sorry, we have a bit of a queue going, but would you like to
Is it a
continue on that
follow-up?
point?
Yeah, so you
please.
don't see how many assets and what total fees a firm would have?
We see the assets under management. We know per product, we know what they're taxable or tax exempt. Okay, we know that. I mean, tax exempt would be retirement and IU Foundation. Taxable would be Bill Gates. But that's it.
Oh, you don't see fees at all?
We don't. We see fee schedules. The fee numbers in this paper, actually no one sees fees. The reason why is fees are discounted. The bigger the client, they discount from a fee schedule. Mm-hmm. We do observe fee schedules. What we do is take a midpoint. At that midpoint we make assumption about that every product in the portfolio for every portfolio in the account in the product mm-hmm. has that level, and then we apply the fee schedule. Doing that, you get, and which is a course estimate at best, mm-hmm. You get that PhD fees are lower. Mm-hmm. But we make we put all these caveats in the paper about that.
Thank you very much. This research is extremely relevant to mine. I do the same in the public sector, mm-hmm. saying that politicians who have higher levels of education tend to perform higher in very neutral ways. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering whether this is related to education or networking opportunities.
Mm. Well, mm-hmm.
Because you are saying these guys tend to be extremely rich and wealthy. So they tend to interact with people that have also wonderful opportunities, great assets, more opportunities to invest. So I wonder how it's actually related to that. And also, whether is it possible to take into consideration their level of experience and expertise? We don't
observe their experience. We do on the founders. Okay, we know when they founded the firm. We know they're still with the firm. We don't observe. I mean, what's the level of expertise? We observe whether they have a PhD in finance and economics or STEM. Okay, mm-hmm. Actually, finance economics outperform STEM, except for those people who publish. And if you publish one or more paper in a top tier journal, and we look up those, then there's no difference between economics, finance, and STEM. But on your point on networking. We do look at elite schools, okay, PhDs from elite schools, arguing that, that might affect the network. But clearly it affects the ability, might affect the training. Maybe they certainly argue it affects the training, and maybe it affects the selection of students. All right, and it doesn't matter. You still get the same numbers for. This is elite, one person in the firms from elite school. This is all person in elite. So this is economics or finance PhD versus other STEM. And the result here is pretty similar to what you see in previous tables. If you publish, let's see, the elite doesn't change the publishing numbers either. So at the end of the day, the only we'd be really interested in another variable to measure networking. We would, but elite school is what we look at for networking. Yeah, hi.
Thank you for this presentation. It's fun seeing things outside my discipline. I was actually surprised a little bit by your instrumental variable, and I'm not a finance person at all. This is based on like my reading a little bit of layperson's stuff that has talked about diversity in the workforce leading to increased performance of firms. And so I was just wondering, I guess, like what the academic literature on that has said or demonstrated, and if you consider it like a...
In finance, well, among these firms, I mean, so if you have a lot of outsiders, okay, which is non-German or Anglo-Saxon names, then you're more likely to hire a PhD and you'll actually perform better. So in that sense, a diverse set of names helps you. But is it the diverse set of names with the PhD? We argue it's the PhD. We don't do anything on diversity within the workforce, and that's actually maybe not a bad thing to look at. I mean, we don't do much on gender either, because there's not a lot of women and I mean, there's not enough women in this sample to do it.
It's just something, I was surprised that it wasn't addressed in talking about the instrumental variable selection, because it seemed to me, well, if it is in fact something that affects firms' performance, then maybe it should be taken into consideration somehow.
Yeah, our view was we found something that worked, and so we're interested in the endogenous magic. We're not necessarily interested in whether diversity, a scatter of names drives performance. Okay, you can go. There are some firms that are very homogeneous. In fact, they're all from the same family that outperform other firms that are very diverse, and that's not a tangent we wanted to go. Tangent to our work. Keep in mind, it started as a finance paper, right? So we're kind of not going down that. But I mean, that's a good point, and we could look at the diversity of names. We know their backgrounds. We know their educational backgrounds. We know they're the 21,700 professionals. So yeah, sure.
I think Dean, you're next.
Okay, a couple things. One is to follow up on Lee, I guess. It seems like you should try to do more with figuring out where these rents go. These 18 billion. Now you say they don't even go to the guys with the PhDs, so that's
The clients.
okay. Well, can you? So there's a competitive process here that's not well thought out. There's that much laying around.
There's no
That's what-
question.
That's what it seems to, I mean, it seems to be something to think about. The other thing is more narrow, I guess. I couldn't really figure out what a PhD firm was and a non-PhD firm, or a PhD product and a non-PhD product. And I can imagine that different ways of defining those might lead to different results. I mean, maybe not.
Okay. So is that because of the writing? So
Yeah, I think so. Or the reading. The combination of writing and reading.
Okay, my apologies. Pete. So
I was sort of hunting around, okay, this is a PhD firm.
if a money management company has a PhD in a key role, we call it a PhD firm, and all of the products it runs is a PhD product for as long as they have that PhD on board. Okay, that's the definition. All right. So that's and there's 134 of those. There's 688 without PhDs. Okay. Now the question of why don't some of those 688 have more PhDs is a question that's unaddressed. We haven't really. I mean, we haven't gone down that road. We've talked a lot about this one. The nature of the competition in the business, these are all sophisticated investors, so they should be able to pick this up, right? Why don't you hire more? Maybe the supply's not there. I mean,
So you're arguing that if we have a PhD in a key role, all of our products are PhD products.
Correct.
Okay, I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, I don't know the industry enough to know.
Well,
I mean, we have a PhD
and that's been
engineer in my firm, and that doesn't mean all our stuff we make.
well in a key role.
Well,
Okay,
key role,
so-
I mean, I don't want a key role. That's all I'm saying. It's just
And-
not
and-
obvious to me that would be the way
so-
to define it.
For most firms, that would be and maybe for some of these firms too, that would be a important, a gross assumption on our part, okay? What happens in this business is these firms as a set of people are relatively small, okay? So you look at AQR management, there are 50 people that doing everything there, managing all the money there. They talk to each other all the time, okay? GSAM is bigger, BlackRock's bigger, Western Asset Management's sort of mid-size. We could do something with firm size, although we control for firm size. We cannot associate PhDs with individual products, other than the founders who have a small number of products. Then we can do that, okay? We have various cuts on what a key role means. So is a key role this set of titles, that we make it narrower? I mean, certainly the head, if a key role is the chief investment officer, that person is probably involved with every product, okay? Nature of the firm, that's probably involved with every product. CEO, probably involved with every product. Head of, risk management, probably not. I mean, we can go through that firm by firm. Though your criticism, which by the way has been made a number of times by referees, your criticism is really, if it's correct, means that we shouldn't find anything, right? So if they're not doing anything in the firm, there shouldn't be any difference between them and the 688 who don't hire PhDs, okay? And we find them. So that's kind of what slowed us down. Was say, look, what we don't know is, and coming back to what we don't know, and we'll coming back to that slide that I showed you with all the faces on it. This is the stuff we don't know. We don't know. We cannot tie products to specific managers. By the way, purposely in the firm, they won't tie. They won't tell you. They don't want any to create stars who can go off and start another firm and compete with them. Okay. The clients here.
The stars know who they are. I mean, that's another part of the competitive process.
But the clients need to know that.
They can leave.
They can leave, and the clients need to know that the star. They need to be able to credibly credibly show that they've done this, that they're responsible for this. All these firms argue that it's a team approach. Okay, but I mean that's an important criticism. That look, we don't tie products to specific managers, so we don't know actually what how they're doing this. I mean, we just don't know. We know some of these people. Lakonishuk, Schliefer, and Vishny. I mean, Lakonishuk does 90% of the work. Schliefer shows up once a month, but maybe Schliefer's doing the work that adds the alpha once a month over Joe Lakonishuk, who's doing they got $30 billion under management. I don't know. Yeah.
Sorry. I will, unless that was on the same point. Okay, yeah, I'll put you on the queue though.
That's fine if you want it.
Was it on that?
No.
Okay, no, it's fine. Go ahead. Yeah, you were next. Yeah.
So I know nothing about the financial industry or a financial PhD and what that looks like and how they're connected. I'm surprised that a STEM PhD would either provide the training or select for a talent that would then be applicable to the financial industry. It makes me feel good. I like it. But can you explore a little more what that might be? And that might be a different paper. And then to kind of not push back, but to just question that a little bit, do you think that there might be a bias within the firm where a PhD is considered more highly valued as a new person and gets more support and resources and opportunities? So might it be kind of the perception of PhD as a valuable person leads to them being a more valuable person? And then the other comment or thought or question on that is, who are the non-PhDs? Might you be comparing a 50-year-old PhD against a 25-year-old non-PhD? Is there potential some bias in there?
It's a 35-year-old PhD against a 55-year-old guy with experience in the business and doesn't like PhDs. So one reason why these other firms, the 688 didn't hire PhDs is they don't value it. They basically think PhDs are just idiots who really all they do is academic stuff. You get a lot of that in this industry. There's a huge range of opinion on that. to address your other questions, how do STEMs do it? Much of the information you get is quantitative. Much of the information you get needs good programming skills. Much of the information involves statistical, mathematical relationships between each other. So if you get a PhD in math, or even something like biology, where somebody's a Python programmer, that's going to be really valuable in this business, as opposed to somebody who does not have. I mean, I've never met a mathematician in this business who isn't good at computing. There's plenty of mathematicians who don't compute, right? So that part of the mathematics ends up here. So the answer to your question is we excluded humanities, but there weren't that many. Okay, there just weren't that many. We compare economics, finance PhDs with STEM PhDs. We find a difference, unless they publish. If they publish, if a STEM PhD publishes in the top journal in their field, then that difference disappears. One paper or more, that difference disappears with economics and finance. So we're arguing that publishing is the talent, shows talent, and background shows training. So economics and finance actually does, or economics finance related, does produce more return than STEM. But as soon as you get a STEM who can publish, that difference disappears. Jimmy?
Interesting.
I'm just trying to get in the queue.
Oh, no, please do. Yeah. But I think next, and then we'll go, and then Jimmy. Yep.
Okay, good, thanks. I have two questions. One is that this year 2000, is it representative, 18 billion? So is it the same across all years?
No. Gross.
Are there years when you have negative return for PhDs?
No. It's always positive. Asset management grows.
Okay.
It's always positive. Yeah, it's not an average per year. I mean, we show average per year, but every year it's the same.
What's positive relative to the non-PhDs?
Yeah, we could show year by year, but it would show the same thing.
Well,
Yeah, that's my question, right? So, like you have recessions, you have bumps, so it doesn't
PhDs
matter,
do
right?
better
So-
in recessions, by the way.
Okay. So the second question, right? So like it looked to me as if you are portraying it to some extent as 18 billion is a net gain to society of having those PhDs being employed. Whereas some
That's what I'm doing. This isn't me, okay?
Right,
My
right.
co-authors absolutely don't. When they see this, they're going to be mad at me, because they absolutely don't want to present it as a benefit to society, just a benefit to the industry and the people who hire PhDs. That's what they're arguing.
So even the industry, right? So because if it's some of that is a constant sum game, right? So it's a redistribution of income between firms who hire PhDs and firms who don't hire PhDs, right? So it's maybe they pick better firms, but it's also like when you sell and when you buy, and when you sell and when you buy, you're basically subtracting that income from somebody else.
Possibly. I mean, that's the debate, right?
Right.
The debate is this, are you taking returns from other people? Is it a zero-sum game, or is active management actually adding something over and above what you would get without it? And that's so my chart at the beginning made the assumption it was not a zero-sum game entirely.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And that's the part you can challenge. For sure, you can challenge that.
You're not attempting to disentangle how much of it.
Can't. I mean, that's an asset pricing question that we do not, A, have the data on, and B, even when people with the data can't really, I mean, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
And then we'll do Jimmy. I'll get you on the queue part.
Do you have the turnover rate for these PhDs? Because
They
you know
don't
that
ever
this
leave.
is due to continuity. that
No,
they have-
when they join these firms, they don't ever leave.
You must die.
I mean, these people, look, these guys are paid millions. I mean, we're talking about people paying millions of dollars. This is where the 1% comes from, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, these are millions of dollars. Why would you ever leave this job?
You get fired.
So we do have firms that go out of business. So we do have firms that go out of business. That 688, 134, and actually one thing we could do is check to see, do PhD firms go out of business? That's a good question. But they never leave. The 531 people, they stay. Once you got a PhD, they're going to stay.
Jimmy.
So first question is purely clarification. Non-PhD firm, they have no PhDs, or they
Correct.
have no PhDs in major roles?
No PhDs in key roles as defined by us. They might have
So
a
they could have
PhD.
PhDs, just
They might.
We might want to make that clear. There could be some PhDs behind the scenes.
Oh,
That's not
yeah,
happening.
yeah. Oh, well, in fact,
I probably also didn't listen.
So-
in addition,
In key rules.
I just want to be sure.
yeah. So here's the key roles. Advisor, chairman, CEO, so blah 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 blah. Okay. What we've got there could be like a lot of PhDs are in information tech. Okay, so they're doing the information management, the data management of the firm. We don't count those. That's not part of the 531. It's only with these people.
All right, so we get to my question. And I don't think it's really part of the research question, but it makes me wonder, so let's say I'm across this bypass over there. What kind of information am I getting about how my money's being managed compared to these other, I mean, do I have my money in a PhD firm or not? And do I know how they're doing in a relative sense?
Well,
They can check relative to mutual funds or something, but can they check relative to?
that's an interesting question. So keep in mind, clients are powerful here. Okay, so a client can make or break a manager. The manager will tell everything the client wants. They will tell, what days of the week they part their hair on the left and what days of the week they part their hair on the right. I mean, you get anything you want from the client. Okay, what you can't get is about your portfolio and about what the manager's doing. Okay, what you can't get is information about other clients the manager has. Okay, unless those clients themselves allow you to disclose it, and only this level of information about what other managers do. So what the foundation does is they will bring around 10 managers. They'll use that's the purpose of this data, by the way. The purpose of this data is to allow people like in the foundation to search around managers and say, okay, let's bring around these 10 people. We'll ask them a million questions. And very often they are allowed by their clients to disclose that I'm hired by CalPERS or I'm hired by GE Capital. And so they will see among those 10, they'll be able to see general information and this level of information about personnel, about returns, etc. But what you won't know is how they're doing on individual accounts, because it's basically a secret. I mean, they don't want to disclose. IU Foundation can't tell how University of Michigan Foundation's doing, except as a general. So if they both have an account with Western Asset Management won't tell IU how they manage Michigan's
I guess
money.
what I was thinking is more, so these PhD firms have names, and the non-PhD firms have names, and can the IU Foundation find out who's using the PhD firms, and
Yes.
are they using a PhD firm?
Yes.
They need your data set in a
Yes.
sense,
Yes.
right?
Actually,
They should be able to identify, whoever they're using, they should be able to identify.
well, okay, so they need this data. What they get is this level of information on a, demand basis, right? What they don't, if they keep the information and date it, they're fine. The problem is that I don't want to get into this other paper, but let me just say briefly why this is great data, is that what I know is how many times firms go back and change the past. Okay, so the 1993 return for LSV was 15%. In 1994, they report a 1993 return as 15.5. How did it change? How did the 1993 return change between 93 and 94?
They have accountants.
They went back and they revised the numbers. So we've got this whole other paper about repackaging. The data that we're showing you is revision bias free. Okay, so actually we, in that sense, know more than any of their clients would know about what they're doing, unless their clients had somebody in-house who kept the data that I kept.
I guess the bottom line in a sense is if there was enough information there, these non-PhD firms would be driven out of the market. That's
Okay, so that addresses an interesting question. That's actually a third paper that we just went through, we just published, which is how much does agency cost determine who gets chosen? And the internal agency cost in a firm is like IU Foundation, is often quite large. Often you're choosing firms not just for return purposes. You're choosing them for, in fact, I remember one manager telling me, I'm not in the money management business, I'm in the entertainment business.
yeah, but that's
I'm here to build stories. So that in a competitive world, you're absolutely right. There should be no non-PhD firms, and this gets back to your question up front. In the world we get, well, I'm not so sure.
Mark.
Gee, my mind's gone like 4 or 5 different ways. For questions, though, so let me decide.
I could say
Okay,
you're
no, one of them is, I tried this in 1 different ways to go. So let me, one that came to mind. So I understand that this dichotomy between PhD firms and non-PhD firms, the way you've done it in terms of labeling something like a PhD firm because it was a PhD firm at the time of founding.
Yes.
Right, and this is to address
The
this concern
endogenous
about-
matching.
Yeah.
Right.
What I'm wondering, however, is I understand why you did it for that reason, but it begs the question, what if a firm was not a PhD firm at the time of founding, but as the firm evolves,
And that's most of them.
they start to have PhDs in key fields?
Right.
Is that picked up?
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yes, absolutely. So the
I guess I
table
didn't quite understand.
table 2 has all firms. Okay.
Yes.
That includes firms that are exactly what you described. As they grow, they add a PhD in one of these key roles. Okay? And the criticism of that column is that well, they're really adding PhDs for advertising purposes. Or the PhDs are jumping on board good firms because they're better able to identify who the good firms are. That's why this is table 2, the bunch of other columns look at founders to try to avoid the problem of, and what you're raising is a question of endogenous matching. And that's an important criticism of our work and probably every paper he talks about in there.
No, the point I'm trying to make is something you might not be, how do I phrase it differently? In organization theory, there's theories about how firms themselves evolve and where, for example, firms that are founded a certain way and then how they alter their own trajectory. Okay? And how persistent when they're founded a certain way, how long does that carry a persistent impact versus the firm itself evolves? The firm itself could be evolving for reasons other than just advertisement. They can be evolving for reasons such as they're actually have reason to believe that in fact they need to evolve and change.
We love that story.
So that, yeah, but I'm not sure that the way you're explaining how you've done this study picks that up. Because it seems like to control for the endogenous issue that you're talking about, that you're not leaving room for that.
So
You're not leaving room for the fact that there are sets of firms who don't start with the PhDs at the time of founding, but they actually do some to evolve and change so that they do.
One thing we could do
And
is,
so I'm wondering, could you do,
yes,
what I'm saying is, wouldn't it be helpful to do a comparison actually showing
Yes.
those that do and don't assume that they're there for
Yes.
advertising?
the non-founders. Look at the PhD non-founders.
Yes.
Yeah,
Look how the firm
PhD non-founders.
Yeah, and
And-
allow the organization itself to evolve in its own form.
That's a great point
And
because
so I'm just saying, there's all these theories and organizational
Right.
behavior about ecology theories and importance of the founding and how they evolve and change over time. And some organizations cannot change, cannot evolve, and others do. So I'm wondering if allowing the ability of some firms to evolve, so they don't start with PhDs, but they do change. And then how do you compare their performance to
Sure.
the ones that don't? So
Yeah.
that was one thing.
that would be very
But
interesting.
also, no firms ever go the other way, is what you said,
No firms ever go the other way, unless they go out of business.
unless they go out of business.
They don't
Which
ever
would
go
be
the other way.
interesting to see.
Yeah,
But if
firms
they
go out of
keep
business, yeah.
going,
Okay, and then the one other, if I may, one
Okay,
other
ask
question.
as many as you want.
I was wondering, how do these firms go about trying to get their clients? It's not clear to me and maybe it's because I'm married to a guy who's in advertising, but it's not clear to me, given what the so to speak target market for some of these firms are, and that can affect how they want to signal or not signal to clients. There may be certain kinds of clients a firm doesn't want to have,
Well,
or they want to focus on, and that can lead to a form of an impacted information problem. In
Taft-Hartley
addition
firms
to the
typically
fact
don't.
that these firms aren't, owned on the stock market, stock prices, but how they might
Sure.
and how their own marketing, advertising, or whatever strategy affects
Yeah, I mean,
their
the
behavior. So I just didn't know.
Firms go after union money don't hire PhDs. They just don't hire PhDs. You don't want a PhD in key role because the union guys they won't give you the money. So it's firms that go after foundation money like IU, they're probably more likely to hire PhDs because they're dealing with a bunch of PhDs over there. So they kind of fit together. So that, the market, how they target the clients it's a network, advertising in specific trade publications. By the way, this data is used for that purpose, and to identify, to advertise themselves. I mean, this is an advertising database. So yes, and that is, that's. I mean, that we could add that as an instrumental variable. The advertising as an instrumental variable.
And I believe you're next. And then we'll go back.
Oh, okay.
And we're running out of time though, so if you do have final ones, let me know.
I can stay for longer. Maybe you guys.
All afternoon.
Okay, well, of course, you're looking at gross, so if you could have better performance and still not dominate others because we just charge higher fees, what would be the fee per firm of these 500 firms, do you think? Total fees?
So the fees are, their fee schedules, fees are substantially lower than mutual funds. So most of the fees are in the range of, 25 to 50 basis points. Probably, 30 basis points or so, 40 basis points would probably be the average.
Okay, so they manage $1 billion or so, these firms?
Yeah,
And
so
30 basis points would be, well, I'm not very good on basis
30
points.
million.
30
Well, I mean, so if you look, 10% would be 100 million. 1% would be 10 million. So $3 million. Roughly $3 million for 30 basis points.
Oh, okay.
Per billion.
So they aren't getting $38 million each in fees.
No, but keep in mind that's why these portfolios are huge, right? Managers often have a lot of might have $20-30 billion under management, and so that's 3-4 million. And these firms themselves, coming back to your organizational argument, they're small number of people. We're not talking about thousands of people in a firm. So a PhD could have a big effect on this group, and the fees are a lot per person.
Sorry, maybe I'm confused. So there are 500 firms that each earn $3 million per year?
There are 822 firms managing the average. Well, the non-PhD firms average 2.9 billion. The PhD firms average about 18 billion. The 50th percentile is 360 million for the non-PhDs and 3.8 billion for the PhDs. So the non-PhD firms at the 50 percentile are not. I mean, they're probably making
On this point, go ahead, Dee. Yeah.
3-4 billion a year or something like that.
So Chuck, maybe this makes a lot of these themes in here. Can you say anything about the change in the structure of the industry over time? Are they moving toward PhD?
Yeah, the convergence.
I mean, the competitive process might not, work its way out.
Yeah,
But
there's a
over time,
growth.
is this the way it's going?
There's somewhat a growth in PhD firms.
You just mentioned the size of the
Yes.
assets
Yes.
much bigger than the PhD firms.
Right.
Probably if you went back to
Concentration.
1980,
Yes.
I don't know what it was.
Right.
That would be a nice.
The problem we have with that question is that you want data after 2007. You want to see what happened in the
You can
crash.
look back too, even if you don't have.
We had other crashes.
That's true.
Was it?
2000.
Yeah, we could do that. We could look at
Was
that.
a crash. 87 was a
But a lot of
crash.
these guys are value managers, Lee, and value didn't lose much money over time. But I have looked at that. There was
Go
a
back in time.
yeah.
87 was
But
a big
I
crash.
mean, in some ways we could update the data we can't update the revision part, but we could update the data, but it's costly. It's like $30,000, $40,000 to update the data.
Any final questions? We have a few minutes left. Yeah.
I'm just trying to think, right? So if it's not PhDs, and who? And by default, I think that's an MBA, right?
Sure.
And then one way to spin
Or
the
an
paper
MS in
would
finance.
be, PhDs are better in whatever calculating the returns
Sure.
than MBA, but then the other way is that MBAs have better people skill, right? So basically, I'd say
No doubt.
you get more return.
No doubt.
You get more return, but I mean, like, I'm the guy you want to deal with, right? So rather than some PhD, right?
He's gonna
Drop the mic.
Yeah. I got an MBA too. But
So that's my point, right? So
Oh, yeah.
there should be like you pointed out yourself, right? So there are like
Mhm.
other factors which allow those firms to survive,
yes,
and so
Mhm.
it has to be.
and
Most of us have math.
glad handling, golf games. I've been down on, the Ritz-Carlton in Palm Beach presenting some of this stuff. I mean, it's just there's a lot of yes. There's other reasons why people
Yeah.
keep the money.
That agency cost thing, I think, is important.
It is.
I mean, I think
It is.
you might want to,
We have a paper in the RFS on agency costs.
yeah, I mean, that's,
Agency cost is huge.
yeah.
Because what happens to these money, we have evidence that when they have a very large portfolio and a very small portfolio, they will subsidize the small portfolio, take some of the return off the large portfolio and give it to the small portfolio. Because often, if the small portfolio is a small account given by a client with a lot of money. So CalPERS gives you 25 million, you're going to do a great job with that 25 million. Even if IU Foundation gave you $1 billion, you're much better off doing a good job with the 25 million because CalPERS has $300 billion to give away. IU, that's it. So that we found, and so far that's the biggest agency cost we found is subsidization across.
Well, there's also, it seems, I mean, IU Foundation is pretty independent, it seems. Well, they lost money,
I know, they've done a terrible job.
that's my point. So I'm going,
As this is streamed out live.
you know, I wouldn't have to raise so much money, they'd lose so much money. And they lose it for the whole university.
You and I have both probably outperformed IU in the past 5 years.
I outperformed them by twofold.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
But, so what's going on? Is it just, is it an agency cost that these guys are sucking up or what? Well,
That's a more general question, and the answer is, I think yes. We argued in our RFS paper that we call it agency issues because as soon as the word agency cost, the theorists get all up in arms. But there's no question that there are other reasons why people hire these managers than just performance. Entertainment, stories, performance metrics. I mean, there are 600 number one funds out there, depending on what performance metric you use. And they're very good at entertainment. So yes, I think those agency costs are quite large, including here.
I think we're pretty much out of time, Charles. I'm not sure if you'd like to make any concluding remarks or.
There's concluding remarks.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Love it.
So performance is superior performance, not a result in endogenous matching, result related to training for sure, also related to talent. Field-specific training does not matter amongst most talented. So we got the Tangled. I think the 444 is something that this guy needs to pay a lot of attention to in this book. Okay, because it is a 444. Thank you so much for your.
Thank you, Charles.
And I'll answer other questions.
My copy really went on it.
Your call will be disconnected.